The Lions in the Storm, the Lannisters in the Dance of the Dragons. When House Lannister declared for King Aegon II and raised the green dragon banner above the golden one, they believed they were pledging themselves to order, stability, and rightful succession. What they found instead was flame, cold steel, and a war that devoured the innocent with the same hunger as it did the proud. The Lannisters did not enter the dance in haste. The old lions of Casterly Rock had long known the weight of war, and young Lord Jason Lannister, bold, charismatic, and proud, believed the realm needed a king firm of hand. When Sir Otto Hightower called for banners, the Westerlands answered as honor demanded. Yet honor in war is a brittle shield, and as the seasons turned, the men of the West found themselves far from home, fighting battles they scarcely understood for a throne they would never touch. They marched first in triumph. The gold of their armor shone bright under summer sun, and the roads from Lannisport rang with confidence. Thousands followed the lion. Seasoned knights, rugged miners turned levies, crossbowmen with thick arms from years spent hauling stone. Mothers waved farewell, believing their sons would return before harvest. But as they left the western hills behind and crossed the Green Fork, rumor traveled quicker than the march. Dragons in the Riverlands, towns burned, armies vanished in a single night. Even then, they did not waver. The first great test of the Westerlands came upon the banks of the Red Fork, where the river runs cold through reed and stone. It was here the lions clashed with the black loyal Riverlords in a sudden and vicious encounter that would mark the beginning of their long decline. The battle at the Red Fork was not a grand engagement of banners unfurled and lines formed with ceremony. No, it was a brutal, muddy ambush born of desperation. The marching Lannister host met the outnumbered rivermen at a crossing of the Red Fork. The rivermen threw back 3 attempts of the Greens to cross the river, with Lord Jason Lannister being mortally wounded in the 3rd attack. Then command of the Lannister host was assumed by Sir Adrian Tarbeck. Adrian and 100 knights shed their heavy armor, swam the Red Fork upstream of the fighting, and surprised Lord Tristan Vance's men from the rear. The Lannisters forced a crossing through sheer, stubborn will. The river ran red that day, and though they drove the Riverlords back, it was no victory worthy of celebration. Their commander, Lord Jason Lannister, was slain. When horns finally sounded, the lions stood bloodied, winded, and already wearier than they expected. A grim truth had settled in. The Dance of the Dragons would not crown heroes, it would break them. Still, they marched. Sir Adrian Tarbeck commanding the victorious Greens and Lord Pedder Piper leading the surviving Blacks in retreat. The specter of the Red Fork clung to them as they pushed deeper into the Riverlands, their numbers thinning not only from battle, but from disease, desertion, and cold. Food was scarce. Small folk turned hostile. The land itself seemed to rise against them. Yet the Lannisters held firm to their oath. As the Lannister forces marched east toward Harrenhal, they were confronted at Acorn Hall by the Black forces led by Lord Joseph Smallwood, the Lord of the Castle, and Lord Piper. Lord Piper died during the battle. However, Lord Smallwood was able to retreat into the Acorn Hall. The battle was small only in comparison to the horrors that would follow. The fighting lasted scarcely an hour, but for the outnumbered Westerlanders, it felt like days. When the dust settled, the Lannisters had lost hundreds and gained nothing but the grim knowledge that the Riverlands would not break easily. Victory, if one could call it that, came at a price the lions could ill afford. They had bled twice now, and the war's end was nowhere in sight. Yet even as the lions bled, other forces stirred in the cold north. Whispers reached the camps of hard, frost-bitten warriors moving south with no thought of banners, coin, or peace. The Winter Wolves, they were called. Northern veterans of 100 northern raids, men grim as January, marching not for king or crown, but for death with honor in battle. 3 days later, Sir Adrian Tarbeck and Sir Harry Penny slew each other in renewed fighting after the Rivermen regrouped. The command of the remaining Green forces fell to old and injured Lord Humphrey Lefford. Rather than besiege the few survivors in Acorn Hall, the Lannister host bypassed it and continued their advance towards Harrenhal. Then came the darkest hour of their long and ruinous march, the battle by the lakeshore, known forevermore as the Fishfeed. Here is where the songs die. Not in a misty ambush, nor in a clever Riverlord trap, but in a grim, inevitable crush of armies along the stony western shore of the God's Eye, where Lord Humphrey Lefford, old and half infirm, set his weary Lannister host with its back to the lake, hoping to avoid being flanked. The ground was poor, the position worse, yet the danger of breaking formation was greater still. He knew that to turn toward one enemy would expose his flank to another. So Lefford dug in, behind his disciplined columns of pikemen, and sent ravens begging for aid from Harrenhal. None reached it. Robb Rivers of Raventree Hall shot down a dozen ravens from the sky before they cleared the tree line. The Lannisters stood alone, and the Blacks gathered. From the north came Lord Roderick Dustin and his 2,000 winter wolves, all mounted, veterans of 100 northern raids. With them rode Lord Forrest Frey, 200 knights and 600 foot. Robb Rivers commanded 300 archers, and then more arrived. Sir Pat of Longleaf with the battered survivors of Piper and Vance levies, Lords Bigglestone, Chambers, Perrin, and the next dawn, Sir Garibald Grey, Lord John Charlton, and young Lord Benjicott Blackwood himself. The noose tightened around the Westermen, but the choice before the Black commanders was harsher still. The Lannisters were cornered, yes, yet to assault a brace line of veteran pikemen would cost them dearly. But to wait too long meant death of another kind. Aemond One-Eye would soon realize the ravens had ceased, and then Vagar would come. So Lord Dustin spoke the words later remembered in every chronicle. Best make an end to these lions before the dragons come. At dawn, they charged. The winter wolves thundered forward first, driving their mounts straight into the hedge of Lannister spears. 5 times they hurled themselves at the line, and each time the spears held. Horses screamed, rearing onto impaled bodies. Wolves fell in heaps of flesh and frozen mail, but still they charged again and again, spending their lives like coin thrown onto an altar. From the east came the Riverlords, pressing the Lannisters' flanks. From the south came Payday of Longleaf's battered host. Arrows rained from Robb Rivers' bowmen, thinning the Lannister ranks. The Westermen fought bravely, unyielding behind their pikes, crying the lion's roar even as they were pushed, foot by foot, into the reeds and shallows. Then the retreat began, not in panic, but in grim necessity. Line buckling, shields splintering, the Lannisters slowly gave ground until cold water swallowed their boots. The God's Eye became their tomb. Hundreds died fighting knee-deep in the reeds, unable to brace their shields or plant their spears. Hundreds more drowned, dragged under by the weight of their own armor as they stumbled backward into deeper water. Knights sank without a ripple. Archers flailed until mail dragged them beneath. The lake fed well that day. Lord Lefford fell, his body trampled beneath his collapsing shield wall. Lord Swift died rallying the right. Lord Rain fell with a sword in each hand. Sir Clarence Crakehall and Sir Emery Hill were cut down trying to pull wounded men from the shallows, yet the Blacks paid dearly. Lord Frey died leading the flanking assault. Lord Bigglestone fell in the reeds. Lord Charlton bled out on his saddle. And of the winter wolves, 2/3 were slain. More than 1,000 northern veterans dead beneath southern skies. By dusk, the lake stank of blood and churned with corpses. The surviving Riverlords wept at the sight, none more than young Benjicott Blackwood, who was said to have wept openly when he saw what victory had cost. The Lannister host, 8,000 trained men at minimum, and possibly far more with levies and sellswords, was annihilated in a single day. The flower of Westerland's knighthood cut down to the last banner. Thus the name, the Fishfeed. No songs were made. No heraldic glory survived. Only a lake full of dead men floating among the reeds, while wolves and crows waited on the shore for nightfall. The ruin of the Lannisters in the Riverlands was complete. And long before the next moon, Dalton Greyjoy would strike the undefended coasts of the Westerlands, sacking Lannisport in the chaos that followed. But that is a story for another time. This was the bloodiest land battle of the Dance of the Dragons, and perhaps the bloodiest single day in the history of Westeros itself. Here, at the lakeshore of the God's Eye, the Lions of the West were not defeated. They were erased,